Maybe you felt annoyed by someone who seemed too cold. But sometimes that very person is the one who dares to live truthfully while you're still trying to hide something inside yourself. Maybe you once blamed someone for being too obsessed with work, without realizing that the feeling of being left behind was awakening a loneliness already buried within you. You don't really hate Capricorn. You're simply standing in front of the silence of a soul, a mirror reflecting the hollow spaces you still don't dare to face. Capricorn wasn't born to please others. They were born to preserve their essence, even if misunderstood, and that truth makes many uncomfortable because it's too real. When you come close to their energy, it might make your skin crawl. But if you go just a little deeper, you'll understand why they live the way they do. And perhaps you'll even see yourself in a lonelier, braver version of them. To truly understand a Capricorn, you must look deeper, not just into the things they silently endure, but into the energetic structure the universe embedded in them from the very beginning. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the planet of limitation, discipline, and maturity. For them, everything of value must be earned through time and effort. Nothing comes easily. As an earth sign and a cardinal one, they live practically, speak only what's necessary, and are always building something meant to last. Capricorn men express affection through actions. They live with responsibility and are often misunderstood as emotionally distant. Capricorn women carry hearts that feel older than their age. They've been holding it all together since they were far too young, deeply sensitive yet guarded, not because they're proud, but because they've been hurt for being real. And if you've ever felt them distant, remember, they didn't choose the easy life. They chose to live responsibly, for themselves and for everything they believe in. That's why the older a Capricorn gets, the quieter they become. Not because they don't feel, but because they choose not to burden anyone with the deepest parts of who they are. 1. Emotion is a luxury. Capricorn chooses silence to stay steady. Capricorn isn't emotionless. They've just grown used to staying calm, even when everything inside feels like a tangled storm. From an early age, they learned to hide their tears because no one had time to listen, or because every emotional reaction was called too much. There were nights when they just stared at the ceiling with no one to talk to until silence became their only refuge. People call them strong, but few ever ask how many times they've fallen apart just to learn how to hold it all together. What drains them the most isn't feeling. It's not being allowed to feel. They've had moments when they truly wanted to break down, to cry in front of someone they thought was safe, but that person was busy, distracted, or simply didn't see them. So they folded the sadness up like a crumpled note, slipped it into their pocket, and walked on, quietly, as if they'd never needed anyone. Capricorn doesn't fear getting hurt. What they fear is falling apart at the wrong moment and realizing there's no one there to catch them. That's why they choose discipline, not just to succeed, but to stay intact, to protect what's left of themselves. In their world, those who fall behind get left behind. And Capricorn will never allow themselves to be that person. 2. Discipline is armor, but it can also be a chain. Capricorn was often the child who made their own bed, finished their homework on time, and figured things out early, not because anyone forced them, but because they were afraid of causing trouble. They grew up in a space where there was no room for weakness, and praise only came with performance. So they learned to measure their worth by how much they could carry. The more weight on their shoulders, the more secure they felt. But deep down, they felt that lonely sting of being told they're too serious, too rigid, not fun like the others. Capricorn doesn't follow rules because they enjoy it. They follow them because they fear who they'd become if they didn't. People see them as the one who's always on time, always one step ahead, always composed. But few ever guess how often they've wished to forget the plan. To be late just once, without guilt. to fall apart without being called weak. Still, they don't give themselves that permission, because in their world, letting go even once could make everything fall apart. They don't cling to structure out of obsession, they cling to it out of fear. Without rules, they feel they'd unravel, and in that unraveling, they fear they'd lose the one thing they've always tried to protect: themselves. 3. The feeling of being used, because Capricorn rarely does anything without meaning. Capricorn doesn't do small talk, and they don't show up just to fill space. They live with quiet intentionality, choosing where to give their time, energy, and words. People have called them dry, too practical, even distant. Just because they don't text every day, don't laugh to please, don't waste words. But those who've truly struggled know Capricorn doesn't make promises, they just appear, right when it matters most. They've poured so much into one-sided connections, steadily, silently, and walked away with not even a word of thanks. That's when they started pulling back. Capricorn doesn't explain themselves because they trust this. If someone really wants to understand, they will, and if not, they won't force it, won't cling. There's a kind of hurt that Capricorn knows too well, not being left, just being overlooked. When they're there, no one notices. When they help, no one remembers. And when they're gone, only then does someone whisper, "Strange, haven't seen them today." Capricorn never asks for much. But when a relationship flows one way for too long, they step back, calmly, quietly, without resentment. Because they believe kindness should never be taken for granted, and their presence deserves to be seen as a person, not a role. Or conditional loyalty and the price of disappointment. Capricorn is the kind of person who rarely opens up, but once they choose to walk with someone, they stay deeply committed. They won't say it out loud, but they remember every little thing you shared and quietly do things you never even knew needed to be done. Their loyalty runs so deep, they become a steady anchor, often without anyone asking them to. And that's exactly why, when the other person turns away or leaves in silence, it feels like something inside them crumbles. They don't blame anyone. They just quietly blame themselves for believing too long in something that wasn't real. What hurts Capricorn the most isn't the breakup. It's the moment they realize the other person stopped caring a long time ago. While they were still trying, still holding on to something they thought was strong enough to last, the other person had already pulled back, fallen silent, or let go. Their loyalty doesn't come from promises. It comes from daily choices. The choice to stay even when there's every reason to walk away. But once they've been left behind, they won't beg, won't cry. They'll just gather up their trust and lock it away in a place no one may ever open again. After enough experiences like that, they start to believe this. Misplaced sincerity is the fastest way to become silent. And they'd rather choose solitude than feel, one more time, like they were just a temporary option in someone else's life. 5. The fear of change, because stability is how they stay alive. Capricorn doesn't shy away from challenges, but they fear what can't be predicted. They need time to plan, to feel like they have some control over how life unfolds. Sudden changes, a person leaving a failed project, a vanished plan, can throw them into a state of disorientation far deeper than most. Because for Capricorn, every stable thing in their life is a pillar they've worked hard to build. Losing just one of those pillars can feel like losing control over their inner world. So when you see them being stubborn, resistant, or unwilling to let go of the old, it's not because they refuse to grow. It's their way of not collapsing when the world around them shifts too fast. It's not that they hate newness. It's that they know Every change is a moment of lost control. And for Capricorn, losing control isn't just chaos. It's insecurity, deep and consuming. They've lost something precious before because of an unexpected change. And ever since, they've chosen to hold on to what's old, to what's certain, even to what no longer fits, simply because they're afraid of having to rebuild from scratch. 6. Lonely in a crowd. Because few ever see their inner world. Capricorn can be successful, respected, and always radiate a sense of stability that puts others at ease. But when the night falls, or after a long day of trying, they often ask themselves, does anyone really understand me? They show up at the party, they know how to smile at the right moments, but deep inside, there's always a quiet emptiness they don't know how to fill. They're not good at saying I'm sad because they believe that saying it wouldn't change anything. So instead, they hold on to the loneliness and slowly turn it into a form of strength. There's a kind of Capricorn who walks into a crowded room and still feels hollow. Not because someone is missing, but because no one truly sees past the smile they wear. They can be connected to the whole world and yet feel lost in their own life. Because for them, feeling understood doesn't come from noise or attention. It comes from a single glance. Sharp enough, soft enough to read the exhaustion behind their "I'm fine." 7. Silent pride and the feeling of being misjudged. Capricorn doesn't boast about what they've done, nor do they enjoy showing off. They believe that what truly matters doesn't need to be said. It just needs to be done, quietly, and let the results speak for themselves. But that very silence often makes people see them as cold, distant, even arrogant or unapproachable. In truth, they're simply not used to asking for praise or needing applause. They've worked so long in silence, it's become a habit, so much so that they've forgotten recognition is also a human need. Their silence isn't about superiority. It's about protecting themselves from explaining things to those who never really care to listen. They do more, think further, carry more weight, but no one sees it. And they never ask to be seen. All they hope is, don't judge them just because they don't speak up. There are values that don't need applause. There are efforts that only ask to be quietly understood, not loudly acknowledged. 8. Relentless ambition. Because moving forward is the only way, they don't feel empty. Capricorn lives with an inner voice that never goes quiet. It tells them they have to achieve, to produce, to create something meaningful. They always have a list, things to complete, goals to chase, even right after hitting their last milestone. For them, having nothing to strive for is scarier than failure itself. But this same drive also wears them down during lonely nights. When others have paused to rest, they're already thinking about the next step. Sometimes they long to slow down, to breathe, but they don't even know where to begin. People often ask, why won't Capricorn just stop? But no one sees that stopping is when they feel most hollow. When there's nothing left to do, nothing to push toward, nothing to aim for, they lose sense of who they are. They live as if standing still means falling behind. And in that relentless motion, they give up meals, quiet evenings, and moments of softness just to keep from feeling like they don't matter. 9. The exhaustion of always needing to be useful. Capricorn never allows themselves to be a burden. Whether in a friend group, a family, or a workplace, they always try to do more, carry more, think further ahead. They're often the one people rely on, but rarely the one anyone asks, "Are you okay?" Their fatigue is usually hidden behind a packed schedule or a quiet smile that says, "I'm fine." But deep down, there are moments when they wish they could simply be ordinary. No pressure, no need to prove anything at all. They never say, "I need help," because they're the one others go to for help. Yet sometimes, the person who always shows up for everyone else is the one who has nowhere to lean when they're tired. They don't know how to be the weak one. And what they fear isn't exhaustion. It's that if they stop, no one will pick up what they've been holding. They're afraid of being silently replaced by their own absence. 10. Idealizing perfection and the feeling of never being enough. Capricorn always sets the bar high, not just for others, but especially for themselves. They want everything to be polished, structured, and purposeful, even when that pursuit leaves them completely drained. They were once the child who scolded themselves over a 9 out of 10, the one who grew up with the quiet ache of still not good enough. Even when they achieve something, a voice inside whispers, "It should have been better." Their perfectionism doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from fear. Fear of letting go and losing the trust that took so long to earn. Capricorn doesn't aim high to outdo anyone, they simply want to make sure they never let anyone down. But eventually they burn out under the weight of that same expectation. When a young Capricorn once blamed themselves for a 9 instead of being comforted, that child grew into an adult who doesn't allow mistakes. And that's their silent tragedy. Doing well has never felt enough, but doing wrong feels unforgivable. 11. Delaying true feelings because they don't want to hurt anyone. Capricorn is exceptionally skilled at putting off difficult conversations. They know how to change the subject, how to smile softly, and how to let things slide without a word. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid that speaking up might hurt someone or shatter something already fragile. Instead of saying, "I feel hurt," they choose silence. Instead of saying, "I don't feel anything anymore," they stay a little longer, hoping their feelings will return. Capricorn often walks away at the very moment the other person no longer realizes how long they've already stayed. They rarely blame, but they always think things through for a long time before letting go. And when they finally say, "I'm tired," it means they've swallowed hundreds of moments they wanted to speak, but no one heard them. They chose silence because they once believed that speaking up would only break things apart. But what they forgot is, sometimes it's honesty at the right moment that holds love together. The longer they hold it in, the further away they drift. And when everything finally breaks, others are left in shock, while Capricorn can only say, "I've been thinking about this for a long time." Loving with clarity, but lonely because few understand that deep. Capricorn doesn't love easily. They observe for a long time, trust slowly, and love in a grounded way, with responsibility, real actions, and long-term vision. They're not the type to express emotions through grand gestures or romantic cliches, but they're the ones who'll drive through the night just to pick you up, remember the little things you like, and quietly plan for your shared future. But because they love with clarity, they're often misunderstood. People wait for sweetness. They show up with quiet care. People crave drama. They only hope for steadiness. To Capricorn, love is a commitment, not something to fill a void, and definitely not just for fun. They love like building a home, brick by brick, foundation first, one day at a time. But people often come for warmth, then leave because of the silence. And so Capricorn finds themselves alone again, dissembling the plans they built with care, silently gathering up the feelings they had offered, and whispering to themselves, "Maybe next time, I'll love just a little less." Capricorn isn't born to be understood right away. They were born to grow up faster than others, to carry more than most, and to love in ways that aren't easy to see. But if you look closely enough beneath that tough exterior, you'll find a soul that pays attention to every detail, holds deep responsibility for what they cherish, and always keeps their promises, even the ones everyone else has forgotten. Capricorn doesn't change easily, but if someone is patient and genuine enough, they'll slowly remove each layer of armor. Slowly, but sincerely. Are you in love with a Capricorn? Or are you the one silently carrying too much on your own? Wherever you stand, remember this: don't just look at how they behave. Listen for what they're not saying. Sometimes the only thing a Capricorn needs is one gaze deep enough to stay. when they no longer have the strength to hold anyone. And if you're in a season where you no longer know how much longer you can hold on, just remember, Capricorn can be vulnerable too. They're simply waiting for a place safe enough to be real, without having to ask for permission. If this video made you feel seen or reminded you of someone you once misunderstood, leave a yes in the comments below.